Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Tuesday morning, the 5th of March, 2026. Yes, it's a pleasure to be back. 24 minutes past 9 a.m. that I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda. It was such a long night. For those of you that managed to catch last night's conversation, thank you so much for sparing the time. A lot of things happened last night, a lot of drama from that 3-all draw between Manchester City and Chelsea. But that's not where our focus will be. That's not where our main focus will be for this broadcast, even though we'll still touch upon there. So, because the UEFA Champions League does return, and I do not think it does get any bigger an occasion in the UEFA Champions League before the final than in the semi-finals, because that's what we have today and that's what we have tomorrow. We have to go through the emotions of it all over again. It's a roller coaster. It's once the season gets to the business end of it, you just know things are going to happen. Things are going to happen in ways that none of us expect. Things are going to take twists and turns and things like that. So it's essentially that and nothing more, nothing less. But I wish to, in a special way, say thank you to Rio Dandy, Reluctant Gamer. Chipes wasn't with us yesterday. Council Billy Matovu Matthew. There was a serious, he called himself Serious Fanbat, something like that. And every one of you that chimed in last night for the conversation yesterday, thank you for making it worthwhile. I keep reminding you guys that every time you join the broadcast and you keep me company, give me a reason to keep going. You give me a reason to carry on. Yes, there was also Nice Nick. Nice Nick, thank you so much for having been part of last night's podcast. I hope all you guys are doing well. So, whereas the business end of things, or the gist of the conversation is going to revolve around Arsenal and Atletico Madrid in as far as their exploits for the UEFA Champions League go in the reverse fixture of the semi-final, the first leg having ended 1-1. We'll start with the Premier League summary of what transpired yesterday night. Hi Adash, good morning. How are you doing, my brother? Always nice to see you back on the forum or on the broadcast. So, like I said, yesterday, if any team, any fan base felt nervous, it must have been the Manchester City fans. I've constantly said in this business end of the season that it is very dangerous to play two types of teams in as far as the Premier League remaining fixtures are concerned. A team that is battling relegation, you do not want to face them. A team that has nothing to lose is one that you wouldn't want to play. Whereas Manchester City won against Burnley by 1-0, but you remember how Burnley made it a bit difficult for them. They did not make it easy. Why? They have nothing to lose. They have literally nothing to lose. They have nothing left to play for besides the fun of it and their pride. So maybe in little contrast, yesterday, Everton, if they knew that if we win, we get back in the conversation of European football. But it's not a break. It's not a make or break for them, So there is a lot of seriousness to it in that context. But also, their life does not depend on it. Why? Because their Premier League status is not under threat. It's not like they are fighting for their survival. It's not like if they win that one game, then they guarantee themselves a place in Europe. So eventually, I felt that they were more a bit relaxed about it than Manchester City. You felt that Manchester City knew, and it felt with the moment of the occasion that the onus was upon them to go and win that game of football. So you could see the nerves kicking in, especially in the second half, because it was such a difficult game. Difficult in the sense that Everton can defend quite solidly. They can defend quite deeply if they need to. They're very good at defending set pieces. They're very good at blocking shots and things like that. Particularly yesterday, we went into that fixture and I was missing um, Idris Kanagwe because I have this part of me that feels if Idris Kanagwe was in that midfield, maybe not Iro Banham, maybe the result would have been different in the sense that Everton would have been perhaps able to see it over the line. But we shall leave the ifs to the sides for now. Manchester City came up with their ugly best starting 11, one that has been more consistent than not in recent times. General Donnarumma in goal, Kushano Van Makehi, Nunes, and Nico O'Reilly, Silva, Nico Gonzalez in the absence of Rodrigo Hernandez Cascante. And again, what I was saying about Everton maybe could be true for Manchester City if Rodri had been there. But like I said, the ifs, we shall leave the ifs to the side. Antoine Semenyo, Ryan Cherki, Jeremy Doku, Haaland. You never felt that the game went dull or still at any one point. It always felt lively, but you sort of were counting on. First of all, I had this expectation that eventually Manchester City were bound to find the breakthrough, and we're talking about it and saying they needed to go from distance because usually when you play teams that are very, very good at defending or teams that sit and dig in deep in terms of their defensive work, it's you ought to always find another alternative way to go about it or to go about the game in trying to score. And towards the tail end of the first half, basically that's the mechanism that they deployed for Manchester City. Because when you look at the first goal, that ball is darted by Ryan Cherki in the path of Jeremy Doku, and he realizes he has, a yard of space in there to conjure something, and he goes for the top corner. And basically, that's what gave them the lead. Good morning, Mr. Milton from London. It's a pleasure to have you on the broadcast always. I hope you're doing okay. So, you always felt that there was that bit of nervousness. But then when Manchester City found the breakthrough, I honestly, given how the affairs had largely transpired, I had not thought that Everton would find a way back in. Why? Because they have always tried, but haven't always had it in them. I said in the build-up that they will always put up a good fight. They will always put up a good fight. But that good fight is oftentimes not good enough because eventually they would crumble around the 80th minute and things like that. So in around the 43rd minute there, Jeremy Doku receives the ball at just on the inside of the 18 yards box, goes to his left and buries it into, the far corner. And it was a beautiful, goal to watch. It was really, really beautiful goal to watch. It's one that you would enjoy at any one given time. So I felt that at that time Manchester City have broken the ice because the game felt like it had an ice to it when it came to the actual goals. Manchester City were dominant in possession. At one point, they had a 97% possession in a space of 5 minutes. That's as dominant as Manchester City can come, and it's always a good thing to thank you, Alex. My colleague Alex just sent me a short clip of about 11 minutes and he's tuned in. Much appreciated, my brother. I hope your morning is doing all right. So, and then on the other side, chances fell far between because I think in the first half, we only had that sort of counterattack when Everton goes through and the ball, I think it was Keenan Drisbury Hall who attempted to make the cross for Beto, and Unfortunately for Beto, it was tipped out of his path by Gianluigi Donnarumma, and when he tried to capitalize on the rebound, Kushanov was there to put in the block. So that felt like the biggest chance Everton had through the entire first half. Yes, they had I think a corner or two in the opening stanza, but it never materialized too much. And then in the second half almost started in no less a similar fashion. But as you know, football is a game of fine margins. You know, football is a game of fine margins. Hello from Italy. That is Borisov. Hi, Borisov. Good morning. How is Italy this morning? I'd want to assume it's about 7:34 a.m. there. So in the second half, Everton started to create some chances, and some of these chances came from some defensive mistakes. For example, when you look at the first chance that falls to, I think it was Ilman Ndiaye, that chance that falls to him, it's a long ball kicked from goal, the area by, what's his name? Jordan Pickford. And then Beto attempts to head it, but he misses the ball. And another City defender tries to head it, but he also misses it. And Ilman Ndiaye goes through. Speaking of Ilman Ndiaye, I thought the Senegalese yesterday was a little bit selfish. And maybe forwards are meant to be in a way, but sometimes, and I keep saying about this, what separates great players from average players or good players, because there are those that are good, there are those that are excellent, and things like that. Usually, what separates them are very small things. The decision making, when you go for goal, when you make a pass, when you play for the team, and when you play for the individual. Because there is a moment where I thought he could have made a better decision because he had the options to him. So that first opportunity comes, and then he feels it was a keeper to beat. I'm not saying keepers to beat are very simple, but as soon as that moment happened, I remember we were on the broadcast here, and I said it was bound to remind Arsenal fans of that, I think, 2022-2023 campaign, when Manchester City had that game against Tottenham Hotspur, that they won by a goal to nil when Son Heung-min went through 1v1 against Ederson Morales. You remember Pep Guardiola hitting the turf on his knees, and somehow Ederson Morales Santana served it. And so it gave Arsenal fans a flashback of that because the circumstances are very much similar. So that's what you had. Besov says Ronaldo or Messi. Both are exceptionally good players. Choosing one over the other in saying this or that is to simplify the debate. But I think we are being very, very glad to be present in their era, in their 15 years of dominating football or so. So that's what I would say about that. So now, you see, when we talk about luck, this is when things fall in place. I'll give you an example. This felt like luck for the Arsenal in the context of this particular game, but also the misfortunes of the game in itself. Ordinarily, given how excellent Mark Gay has been ever since joining Manchester City in January from Crystal Palace, he's hardly placed a foot wrong. Of course, you have to reflect back on that UEFA Champions League game at the Santiago Bernabeu to sort of fault him because he was not good enough. I think it was Brahim Diaz that did a number on him before Fede Valverde scored. So that's the only one you're going to remember. Roaring Rodri says hi. Hi, Roaring Rodri. Good morning. Where are you joining us from? So, besides that, at the moment at the Santiago Bernabeu, I do not think you had seen Mark Gay place a foot wrong. And yet yesterday, it was his diminutive or short pass in attempting to find his goalkeeper in Gianluigi Donnarumma that cost Manchester City a goal because Thornberry, who had come on in the second half for Beto, lashed onto that and he put it beyond the reach of the Italian goalkeeper. So it was 1-1. They wanted to rule out the goal. Why? Because the moment in itself, the moment in itself felt okay. Thornberry is in an offside position when that ball is played, but he does not get to the ball, and Mark Gehi gets a good control of the ball. And then, because he has full control of the ball, we move from one phase of play to another. So he passes it to his goalkeeper, or at least attempts to. The linesman went for an offside. Now, a lot of people are asking, why hasn't the goal been ruled out? Now, unfortunately, whether you like the rules or you do not like them, they are what they are. Robert, is Everton versus Man City that you're reviewing? Yes, it is the one that I'm reviewing briefly before we move on. So, in the context of it, is that it's simply the application of the rules. Yes, Thornberry is in an offside position. Does he make an attempt to go for the ball? Yes, he does show intent to go for the ball. But because then McKay has control of the ball, it's late. It's defined to be the game has moved into a second phase. And therefore, he has full control of the ball. He passes it. Now, remember, in attempting to make a run for the ball, he does not actually get to the ball, or he's not anywhere close to it, by the way. So it's deemed that the player has moved into a second phase. And Manchester City, before you fans, and I mean Man City fans, before you call upon the blame to the rules, really, Mark Gehi should be taking responsibility. I did not feel that he was under too much pressure for him to make a short pass. He could have gone in the opposite direction. He could have tried to find Nico O'Reilly to the left. He could have, I don't know, maybe even passed it out. But of course, that's easier said than done once the action in itself is done. And then that's how they found the equalizer. Then the second goal, again, all goals, by the way, came in what felt like a bit of against the run of play, because Everton had been far from their best on the day, and yet somehow Jack O'Brien scored a header to make it 2-1, and that's when you could sense the nerves kicking in, because these are goals that are not too far apart. They sort of come in quick succession. The goal from Tony Barry is in the 68th minute, the equalizer, and then 5 minutes later, that's when Jack O'Brien scores to make it 2-1. So because the goals are so close to each other, you thought to yourself, wow, this is Manchester City crumbling under pressure. I can only imagine the kind of words or terms, difficult, scathing, or whichever they may have been, if it was in the respect to Arsenal, And then in the 82nd minute, there's that ball thrown into the channel. Again, when you look at the defenders, I don't think you can fault them much this time around, because for the third goal, it takes a deflection of Kushanov, and before landing into Tony Barry's path, and he scores it, and it's suddenly 3-1. And but even at that point, for those of you that were part of the broadcast, I remember mentioning this. I never felt like Manchester City were not going to come back. Maybe I was being too optimistic about their prowesses, or too pessimistic about Everton, depending on which way you look at it. But having seen Man City, and particularly oftentimes go back to that game against Aston Villa, that they went 2-0 down and came back and won 3-2, because it was final day, and yet Liverpool were already winning on the other side. I have always believed that they can find a way to come back. So, and for as long as you have a goal, if it was 3-0, it would have been different. But for as long as you have that one goal, when you have a 2-goal cushion, it takes 2 bad moments for you to concede. For those of you that want a better example, go back to Arsenal's 2-2 draw against Wolverhampton Wanderers. They had a 2-0 lead. They thought it was comfortable, and yet somehow they squandered it. So, to the context of yesterday's game, Everton did themselves no favor of scoring in the 82nd minute, literally, and only conceding just 2 minutes later. Upon the restart, as soon as that ball is restarted, it's passed into Brad Erling Haaland, and it dinks up, Jordan Pickford in goal, and it's 3-2. And then we are saying, oh, well, here we are. Will Pep be leaving at the end of the season? A lot of speculation is pointing in that direction. There's a lot of belief and conviction in certain circles that the 10th season is his last at the Etihad. However, apparently, big news outlets or even journalists are very are being are being uh, self-censoring on the topic. Why? Because they know Pep Guardiola still has a 1 year to his contract, and therefore he can easily change his mind to say, "Oh, look here, I'm going to see out the remainder of my contract," and therefore he does not leave. So just imagine you bet your credibility on it. Let's say you're David Austin, you're Sammy Mokbel from the BBC Sport, you're a Craig Paul from is it Daily Mail, all these guys from the Telegraph, etc., etc. You stick your name to it and say Pep Guardiola is going to leave at the end of the season, and then he does it. But inside the realms of the Etihad Stadium, they have done a lot of groundwork in preparation for his eventual departure. There's reports that they are going to name one stand of the Etihad after Pep Guardiola. Then there's also reports we all know for with absolute certainty that Manchester City have spoken to Enzo Maresca as their preferred choice of a replacement for the Spanish gaffer. So there's all that seems to point in one direction, but we will find out at the end of the season. For now, we still have a Premier League title in our hands to run after, but also for Manchester City and particularly Pep Guardiola, he still has an FA Cup final to play. That will be next weekend, but one when they take on Chelsea. So we'll have to wait and see. Then, so it was 3-2. And from then on, again, Everton had another chance. It fell to Ilman Ndiaye. He should have played his teammates in. He chose to go for himself. His shot was weak, and it simply fell to Gianluigi Donnarumma. Then, in the tail end of the game, they tried to go for it. They're looking for an equalizer. Gianluigi Donnarumma comes in for a corner. I don't remember. I think he had a touch on the ball, but Everton defend well. But because they had not committed an individual in the space, by the time they clear that ball and try to run to it, a Man City player beat them to it, and the ball comes back. When it comes back in quick succession, they concede a corner on the other side, and I felt that they had a lapse in concentration in that moment of the two corners in regards to how they defended Everton. Because when you look at the amount of time on the ball that Jeremy Doku has and the yard of spaces that he has before carving that ball into the back of the net beyond the reach of Jordan Pickford, you felt that they could have done better to defend. And therefore, that's why I say it will feel like a loss for Everton in the context of what it would have meant had they won in terms of potentially going for some form of European football, because seventh place is Conference League football. Then sixth place is UEFA Europa League football. But remember, sixth place can also mean Champions League football. Under what circumstances? I'll give you an example. Let's say Aston Villa finish within the top 5. They already have a place straight on booked in the UEFA Champions League. But then they also win the UEFA Europa League final. That would then mean, because he's taken both windows of going for the Champions League, sixth place could end up being a Champions League place in the Premier League. So, and then they would have 6 teams there, So that means then UEFA Europa League place goes to 7th place or the FA Cup winner, because it's an either or. Because Chelsea could easily finish outside the top. Let's say they finish 8th, but then they win the FA Cup. That means they take the Europa League position, and then the other one takes the UEFA Conference League position. So there's that bit to it. Pep has achieved so much, but has hit a plateau with this team. I don't necessarily think he's hit a plateau, in my humble opinion, Mr. Milton. What I think is that he's going through what every manager that stays as long as he's been in the job goes through. There has to be a moment of a transition. Allow me to remind you, Sir Alex Ferguson won the Premier League title in 2003. After that, he conceded it to Arsenal in 2004, and then Chelsea won it for the next two consecutive years under Jose Mourinho. But he used those 3 years to build a team that went on to dominate for the next 8 years. So equally for Pep Guardiola, he's gone through different phases. Remember, he came in 2016, did not win anything. Then he assembled that team, oftentimes referred to as the Centurion team, that won the league with 100 points. Then the next season they went again and won. Then 2020 Liverpool wins it, and then he picks himself back up, of course, with a few additions and he keeps on winning. So he's going through a bit of a transition. Just look at or reflect yourself on how many significant players have left Manchester City in the last 2 to 3 years. Kyle Walker, Kevin De Bruyne, Ilkay Gundogan, Riyad Mahrez. Push it a little bit back and you find the Emerick Laporte, Joao Cancelo, Ederson Morales Santana, Stefan Ortega. You have a huge chunk of players that have left in that span of time. And that speaks to a transition. Look at how many new faces have come in. James Trafford, Gianluigi Donnarumma, the likes of Kushanov, the likes of Nico Gonzalez. You look at players like Savinho. You look at Jeremy Doku is part of the transition, even though he's won the Premier League with them, and that kind of thing. Omar Mamosh, Anton Semenyo, is that all that? So you must look at it in that angle. But let's leave that to that. But what that result meant was that Manchester City have then put back the Premier League title race back into Arsenal's destiny or hands to self-determine their destiny, because where they were with that game in hand literally meant that if they won all their games, they would have clinched it, if other than Arsenal outscoring them, But now it's gone back to points, to be determined by points. It still can go back to goal difference and goals scored if Arsenal stumble, because I don't know, for the Arsenal fans that follow their conversation in multiple forums, they'll know for a fact that there's a whole lot of nervousness about their game against West Ham. And you have to run it back to, I think, sometime in that 2022-2023 campaign, most probably, where you had Arsenal be forced into a 2-2 draw at the London Stadium. So for those of you that have those memories, you will know why that game, they're a bit nervous about that game, but also the context of West Ham being in the relegation battle and where Tottenham Hotspur currently are. So there's all that to it. Then, because imagine by the time Arsenal play West Ham at 7:30 p.m., I think on Sunday, let's say Tottenham have lost their weekend game. It could, put it back into West Ham's hands to say, we still have a say, we still have it in our hands to determine our own destiny. But it was that 3-3 draw was such a huge dent for Manchester City. Now, also in yesterday, we had an early kickoff between Chelsea and Nottingham Forest, and Chelsea were shambolic. 2 goals from Timothy Awoni, and then another from a penalty from Igor Jesus. Did fire Nottingham Forest to victory. We're talking about a Nottingham Forest side that did not have most of their starters. Matt Sells was in goal. You had a lot of players that do not start usually games. Timothy Awoni, I do not remember the last time he had started game of football in Nottingham Forest colours, but somehow he did start. Hi Pedri, good morning. It's been a minute. I hope you're doing okay and looking forward to the El Clasico on Sunday. So they had players like Luka Netes, people players like James Market in that midfield, Ryan Yates, who is oftentimes come from the bench, Dylan Bakwa. This one was signed in the summer, but he's not been a regular starter. We know that backline often has the likes of Neko Williams, Ola Aina, Moriro, Milenkovic Savic, and most recently Stefan Ortega in goal and things like that. But it was Morato that was in the backline. Giacuña, you say goodbye Pedri, and good day at school. Then Zech Abbott, those kinds of players were the ones in the team. So, and somehow they managed to beat up against what you felt was a very strong Chelsea side. I mean, of course, Tosin Alderweireld is not one of the better defenders, but I mean, he's still a Chelsea player. And then Jesse Darry, I mean, maybe that felt like a weak link for me. Cole Palmer missed a penalty in that game, and Chelsea was shambolic. So they lost the game. Anyways, for those of you that have just joined us, welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is my name. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Now, it's time to move on away from the Premier League because let's take a pause from the Premier League and then focus on the biggest bull in the room. That's the UEFA Champions League because Arsenal are in action today against Atletico de Madrid in the reverse fixture of the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League. Like I said in the preamble of this video, in the UEFA Champions League, the stage doesn't get any bigger than this particular front before the final. It is the road to the Puskás Arena in Budapest, Hungary. That's where we are all driving to. Yes, Chelsea form is shambolic. I mean, maybe the only positive is that at long last they scored a goal in the game because Joao Pedro with a spectacular goal. Ordinarily, the kind of goal that you would want to see in a game that earns you a point or at least a victory, but it wasn't the case with his bicycle kick of a goal. But in the same game, he also had the goal ruled out for offside, which was, I mean, it was very tight. It was skin tight sort of offside. So Arsenal are in action at home against Atletico de Madrid. Now, if they needed motivation coming into this fixture, I think they got it in their comfortable 3-0 victory against Fulham over the weekend. Released Atletico de Madrid, who rested their entirety of their first 11, managed to find a way to beat up against Valencia over the weekend by 2-0. But if Arsenal received any more motivation, it must have come from yesterday's result between Everton and Manchester City to say you have a reason to believe in yourself again, more than just the hope of taking care of your business and then the stars align for you mathematically. So in whichever sense you wanted to think of it. So I feel that they could use that positive energy from yesterday's result in Man City Everton to further put up a better fight. Not that it is of great significance, but it's a motivating factor to say, look, Manchester City have put it back in our hands in as far as the Premier League is concerned. And yet we have the keys in this Champions League to self-determine our own destiny. Do we make it to the final in the first place and then look to go ahead and win it? The chance is there for the taking. The fortunate thing for them is that there's no longer away goals full. That if it ends in a 2-2 draw in normal time, that then Atletico de Madrid would advance on away goals full. No, we must find a winner after 90 minutes, after 120 minutes, after 140 minutes, if it goes to penalties. So there's all that to think about. Like I said, both teams are not feeling bad about themselves. The difference is Arsenal are still in the Premier League title race, and Atletico Madrid are only in this title race for the UEFA Champions League. We've seen them rest players for every tie that they've come through at the business end of the season. We saw that against Barcelona, or prior to the games against Barcelona. Remember, they played Barcelona prior, that was in the Spanish La Liga, before going away to the Camp Nou for the first leg of the semi-finals, of the quarterfinals of the same competition. So for the Arsenal camp, the good news is that Kai Havertz and Martin Odegaard are available to be in the matchday squad. Julian Timber is still a miss, as well as Mikel Merino. I do not know if Arsenal fans will be happy with the idea of having Kai Havertz and Martin Odegaard. Does that change Mikel Arteta's approach about the game in terms of team selection, or does it give him a selection headache? But given Victor Gyökeres' performance from the weekend, where he scored the brace and provided an assist for one, I do not think any Arsenal fan out there would be too pleased if Mikel Arteta did the unthinkable, but one that you would still expect nonetheless for a guy of his stubborn character, if he chose Kai Havertz to lead the way ahead of Victor Gyökeres. Arsenal could get through against Atletico de Madrid. I mean, it's a 50-50, So it is a possibility for them. The advantage first and foremost is that it is a home game before their fans. Maybe approximately about 55,000 fans are in there to cheer for them. That's with the assumption that the 5,000 go to, excuse me, go to Atletico de Madrid. So it's a huge opportunity. There's not much history between these two sides because you have to go back to 2018 in the semi-finals of the UEFA Europa League when Atletico de Madrid knocked out Arsenal. It was a 1-0 victory for them at the Wanda Metropolitano before drawing the reverse fixture in a 1-all draw. Antoine Griezmann scoring the late equalizer to cancel out Alexander Lacazette's goal. So I think basically that's as much as the history that there is between the two sides. So Atletico de Madrid went through 2-1 on aggregate score. Other than that, the others have been friendlies. And then also earlier on this season in October, the two sides met and Arsenal put 4 past Atletico de Madrid. Now, of course, I have zero expectation that Arsenal can pull the same plug to put 4 past Atletico. Are they capable in terms of their team structure and squad? Yes, they're capable of putting up such a result. But the way they've been going about games in recent times leaves you no conviction. But forget not that Atletico de Madrid have equally improved. And we know that Diego Simeone can really, really set out his team to be very structured, to be very conservative, to be very frustrative, but then also look to capitalize on counterattacks to, win a game of football. We saw how significant Antoine Griezmann was in the first leg. And then we saw how Julian Alvarez caused you lots of problems. Antoine Griezmann hit the crossbar. We saw how maybe unlucky or very fortunate David Raya was to save, I think, twice from Ademola Lookman. That's to say that Atletico de Madrid really, really put up a fight. Essentially, for me, it felt like a game of two halves in the first leg. Arsenal fairly dominant in the first half. Atletico de Madrid bringing the game to them in the second half. It's almost like Atletico de Madrid had felt that Arsenal had tired a bit and therefore they were there for the taking. They did a lot to pressurize Arsenal players on the ball in terms of crowding them out to win the ball easily back and run on and create chances on the other side. So I remember Ben White, who conceded a penalty in that game, was lucky to not concede another because there's a time when he appears to foul Ademola Lookman, but Ademola Lookman stayed on his feet, and that was very, very important. So you never know. The big question, one of the big questions that there is today is how then do Arsenal set up? If you're Mikel Arteta, what team are you choosing? Over the weekend, we saw a change of guard where Martin Zubimendi was dropped to the bench to pave way for Miles Lewis-Kelly, who had the man of the match kind of performance against Fulham. And it reminded me, or a reaffirmation of what I had been saying throughout the entire campaign, that when you come up in lesser games like against Fulham, against Bournemouth, Burnley, you can play a single pivot. Either you choose Rice or Zubimendi, but let one of them be the one starting. Nonetheless, I feel that the occasion is too big, a stage too important, the stakes too high for him to go the same direction. That's why I think that Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi are going to be back in that midfield double pivot. The question then becomes, who is going to play ahead of them? Is it going to be Martin Odegaard or Ebelechi Eze? And then when it comes to the wings, who is there? Bukayo Saka, I suspect he's going to start this one, unless he suffers some form of injury or issue during the warm-up. And then Gabriel Martinelli, do we get his fresh legs to run down those channels? Or we get Leandro Trossard? I do not know. Victor Gyökeres to lead the lines. Then in your centre back, I think it's a given. William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes, Pierre Hincapié probably starts at left back ahead of Ricardo Carafiori, who equally had a very good game against Fulham over the weekend. Then at right back is where the big question is. When I watch back or reflect back on Ben White's performance against against Fulham over the weekend, I'll be the least surprised if Mikel Arteta chooses to start Christian Mosquera in that right back role. I'll be the least surprised because it felt like Ben White placed a lot of feet wrong in that game against Fulham. So, but anticipate more or less that's going to be the sort of possible, probable lineup that you have. I do not think Noni Madueke will start this fixture. I cannot guarantee on Gabriel Martinelli, but you never know. You never know. And then on the other side of Atletico de Madrid, Jan Oblak in goal. Of course, over the weekend it was David Mosso, David Hanko, or then Mark Weibel could be the ones that start. Matteo Ruggeri, as well as Marcos Llorente at right back. Then the midfield double pivot of Johnny Cardoso and Koke. Then you have Gliano Simeon to one side and Ademola Lookman on the other, Julian Alvarez and Antoine Griezmann. Now, in the history of dark arts, I think if Arsenal had to cancel one player out in this game, would be Julian Alvarez. I mean, he's such brilliant with both legs. He's dangerous in set piece plays. If you do concede free kicks in and around the 18 yards box, he's going to smash. He's going to smack them on target. You remember, even in the last fixture, he got one. He did not find the target, but he wasn't so far off. So Arsenal would want to not concede those silly free kicks or fouls near their 18 yards box because you have a danger man in the other side that can strike that ball quite swiftly. You remember how he took his penalty. David Raya hardly moved, really. So, and then in terms of the managers, of course, Diego Simeone is miles more experienced than Mikel Arteta, but if there's one thing they have in common is that they both never guided their respective teams to the triumph of the UEFA Champions League. In any case, Arsenal have never won it in history, and nor have Atletico de Madrid. In fact, the two sides have both played the most number of games with Arsenal above Atletico de Madrid without winning this competition. So there's that. Can Arsenal break the jinx? Well, if they think they can break the jinx, it begins today with finding a way to win against Atletico de Madrid. The key battles, like I've highlighted in those respective starting 11s, I felt in the first leg, Antoine Griezmann was accommodated a lot of space and time to be on the ball, and it nearly cost them. Hi, Cedric. He says, hi, Robert. Hi, everyone. Good morning, Cedric. It's a pleasure to have you back on the podcast. So, if you let Antoine Griezmann roam around the pitch as he pleases, he's a very, very dangerous player. He's a very dangerous player. He can drive the ball forward in terms of carrying it by himself. He can have an excellent through ball. He can have a good shot from distance, and all those kinds of things. He's capable of doing it all. So you must be intentional on not letting that happen. But then also, they have a vulnerability, I think, in players like Koki. He's a very good player, but as the game wears on, he is one of those players that will tire, and maybe you can exploit him. So Ben White has to be at the top of his game if he's the one going to start at right back. Or Christian Mosquera, they have to be at the top of their game. So Arsenal is in defense. Now, the other thing that Arsenal have going for them is that they do not concede too many goals. Actually, in the knockout stage of the competition, that's from the round of 16 up to present day, in the reverse fixture of the semi-finals, they've only conceded 2 goals, one against Atletico and the other against and the other against Bayer Leverkusen. So at the round of 16, you remember that 1-1 all draw at the Bayer Arena. So then, even when you want to go back to the league phase, they had a very, very solid defense. And yet Atletico de Madrid have been conceding lots of goals away from home. So maybe, just maybe, that's one of Arsenal's strengths. But in the spirit of playing an attacking game, I don't know, I have this thing about me that ideally I would play Declan Rice as a 6, play Martin Odegaard if he's fully fit enough to start. I play him in the 8 since he likes to drop so deep, and play Eze in the 10. And then keep Bukayo Saka wide and Gabriel Martinelli the other, and Victor Gyökeres. In other words, you'd have 5 attack-minded players on the pitch. and that could be a huge bonus. That's how I would look at it. I would ask Declan Rice to do all the donkey's work to patrol that midfield. And by the way, speak of Declan Rice, it did feel like in the game against Fulham, he did not need to use a lot of energy. Contrary to what you often see about him, he was not all over the place. Miles Lewis Kelly did a lot of good work in that midfield. And as soon as Arsenal took their lead, they looked to have switched positions with Lewis Kelly now dropping into the 6 and then Rice occupying the 8. But when you look at the start of the game, it's Rice in the 6. Milton says final may be Arsenal versus Bayern Munich. Yesterday, somebody was asking me, what do you think would be the ideal final? And I said, the ideal final would be PSG versus Arsenal. That would be the ideal final. Two sides, one that has never won it and one that only won it the other day, which was last year. Arsenal Bayern Munich would nonetheless still be a very, very intriguing final. But Bayern Munich's pedigree, their form, their attacking force is quite a force to reckon with. I know Arsenal have beaten them before, but just because you've beaten them before does not give you guarantees that you'll beat them again. In any case, Arsenal are the perfect example of that. Last season, they beat PSG by 2-0 in the league phase and then lost the same side, home and away by 1-0 and by 2-1 and Parc des Princes. So you cannot really bank on that capital from the league phase as the overall yardstick to say it will be, a one that they knock off the park. So there's a lot of context to it in that sense. So ideally, I think for Arsenal fans, I do not know who they would wish to see in the final. If their team were to advance to the final, who would they rather face? Would it be PSG? Would it be Bayern Munich? I anticipate that they could want to see PSG. I do not know. That's mere speculation from me. But I mean, after all, it's a 50-50. They would welcome any. Cedric says, Milton, the issue could be who could be able to defeat Bayern Munich. I mean, you see, when it comes to the final, it's a make or break. You do not need to be good to win. You can be ugly and still find a way to win. You can, those kinds of games that have ended 1-0. We've seen the finals that ended 1-0. Going back to the 2021 Champions League final, majority of the odds were in Manchester City's favor. And yet somehow Chelsea found a way to win. That goal by Kai Havertz, got them the victory. So the final becomes a 50-50, whether you're playing an underdog or not. Usually it's not a 50-50 if you're playing a team like Real Madrid, who have that rich a history in the competition. Yes, Bayern Munich have won it 6 times, and if they were to meet Arsenal have obviously never won it. But forget not that Bayern Munich also met Chelsea in the finals in 2012, when Chelsea had never won it. That Roberto Di Matteo Chelsea, who won it on post-match penalties that preceded a 1-1 draw. And then they came back in the final in 2013 and beat Borussia Dortmund to win it. So it can happen, So whichever comes through, I think for the Arsenal fans and Arsenal per se, the most important thing is to get to the final, and then they'll try to see what then happens there. Because a final is 50-50. It's 50-50. 50% chance you win it, 50% you don't win it. Now, usually what tilts the odds in one other team's favor in comparison to the other is that's now the strength in squad and things like that. When you look at players available, because you could get to a final and somehow you've lost majority of your key players to injury. Remember Xabi Alonso in the Champions League final of 2014, he was on injury. He could not help his team. He was watching unagonizingly as the team were losing by 1-0 until that late header from Sergio Ramos that restored parity at the tail end of the 90 minutes or in added time. And then the game went to extra time. So you can have that, luck. So it can happen to Bayern Munich that they get to the final and then suddenly they are without Hurricane, maybe Musiala or Michael Olise and Luis Diaz have suffered injuries for one reason or the other. It can happen. True, but the striking power of Bayern Munich may give them an advantage. Yes, it would, like I said, in the context of the strength of squad, their forward line could be the advantage that decides it all. But like I said, forget not that Arsenal have beaten the same side before. Therefore, if they need conviction or belief or self-belief that they can do it, is that game that they beat them. Of course, I think Luis Diaz was not in that game, was he? Because it was Michael Olise, it was Leonard Carl, it was Serge Gnabry, and Hurricane. So it could be, the other side of, or the flip side of the coin. So, in as far as today's game is concerned, it's going to be nervous. It's going to be nail biting. But whoever scores first could have a big advantage. We've had, because that first goal that breaks the ice is very important. I have a feeling that both teams may want to be a bit cautious, given that the game is at parity. Why? You do not, you want to have respect for your opponent in some form or shape. And for as long as you do not concede, you still have a chance. So in a way, we could end up with a bit of a cautious game from both teams. We know how Arsenal can try and recycle the ball, play in a bit of a conservative manner, so much to the anguish or grievance of Arsenal fans. And usually you see them take risks in the back line that they would not necessarily take in their forward lines. You'd want to cut that out. But I think Arsenal have to be a bit more direct. Against Fulham, they did not do a lot of that, passing the ball backwards. They tried to look as forward as possible. So you want to cut out those kinds of things. Atletico Madrid, the idea is simple. Defend as solidly as possible, trying not to concede, and then you'll capitalize on moments or chances when they come. It could be a corner kick that decides the tie. It could be a counter-attack that decides the side when maybe players of either team have committed to go and try and score from a corner. So these are games of fine margins, really. But Diego Simeone, very, very experienced. He's coached his side. This is, I think, his third semi-final in 15 years at Atletico de Madrid. At one point, he knocked out Bayern Munich. At another point, who did they knock out before the 2014 final? Was it Barcelona? And by the way, all the times or the other two occasions that they met Barcelona in their route in their path in the UEFA Champions League, they made it to the final. That's an odd statistic out there. So we are waiting to see what Arsenal unleash. Do we get a man of the match kind of performance from Bukayo Saka's, like we had in the opening 45 minutes before he was withdrawn? He's going to be such a crucial player in that game, So do we trust him to carry Arsenal forward? Do we get a performance from Victor Gyökeres, who I thought was fed on scraps in the first leg? So, and then on the bench, you must have the players that can come and change the game in your favor if things are not going in your way. So that's where I think the likes of Kai Havertz will be coming in. The likes of Noni Madueke's decision making is still wanting. Leandro Trossard, Gabriel Jesus was a regrettable mistake over the weekend for his substitution. It felt like such a waste. He had zero impact on the game whatsoever, So basically, you had all that in that game. But like I said, there's a lot of positives for the Arsenal fans to look forward to going into this particular fixture. I've seen Atletico Madrid switch to hotels. I've seen them go to training at the Emirates Stadium. At one point, Julian Alvarez was testing out his ankle before joining the rest of the group in training. Like I said, if I'm Arsenal, I'd be looking to find a way of knock Julian Alvarez out of the game. You remember what Real Madrid did? Was it the 2018 UEFA Champions League final when they knocked Mohamed Salah out using Sergio Ramos? Yeah, put the most dangerous man out of the game and then, fight the rest one-on-one or vigorously. So, excuse me, because but then even if you knock him out, you must be ready to defend against Alexander Solo. So he's one of those guys that they do have. Otherwise, Nicolas Gonzalez and Pablo Barrios are the players that could miss that tie for the Atletico de Madrid side. And so the question is, what are your predictions? Who do you think is going to go through? Arsenal versus Atletico de Madrid. The other game is tomorrow, obviously, between Bayern Munich and PSG, and we'll do the preview for that one tomorrow. So Arsenal will need a little bit of luck. In the first leg, they had the luck in a way because that ball from Griezmann on another day does not hit the crossbar; it goes underneath, and it's a goal. So they'll need a bit of luck to go through today's game. Okay. Mikel Arteta wants to make a bit of history by becoming only the second manager to guide Arsenal to a Champions League final. But more importantly, he wants to make history by becoming the first Arsenal manager to win Arsenal the UEFA Champions League. So expect him to do whatever it takes. Whether you want to call it dark arts, whether you want to call it ingenuity to try and win the game of football. Unfortunately for them, the UEFA Champions League has not taken lightly the shenanigans that usually happen during set piece plays, whether it's free kicks and corner kicks. So oftentimes they will blow for fouls. And Arsenal have not seen Arsenal score from a direct corner through a header in a long while. The last time they scored through a corner was against Newcastle, but it was start the ball short and pass it around. So there's that to that. But if push comes to shove, be rest assured Arsenal can also hurt the opponent through set pieces, in that regard. So any changes that you want to see to either team? Do you think they are all good enough? I think they can go toe to toe. My personal prediction is Arsenal to win my personal prediction will be for Arsenal to win by 2-1. Home advantage, defensive solidity, that bit of combination. Mzee Tewewase, you seem tired. It comes with long night broadcasts. My broadcast last night ended at what? Close on to 1 a.m. and after that I had another shift, but it should be no excuse. I know I lack a bit of freshness because I also woke up early to get some work done. Sometimes it happens, and apologies for that. But anyways, so there must be a way for Arsenal to win. There must be a way for Arsenal to win. It's not a given. The 50% chance that they have that they can win this tie is the same 50% chance that Atletico de Madrid can have to win it. It's all about how, because these are the kind of games where you feel that you say if Arsenal can win, it will be their first Champions League final, so there is pressure. No, it will be their second. Maybe you're saying the first since 2006, but it will be their second. The first came in 2006 when they met Barcelona in Monaco, France, in which they lost by 2-1. Jens Lehmann receiving a red card in that one, and the rest is history. The rest is history because they lost. So, the pressure is there. The pressure is there. Why? Both sides have never won it. And there's this anticipation from the world of football that they're going to play some really, really boring and conservative football, which I did not think it is what we saw in the first leg. I've seen boring conservative football before, enough to know that we saw in the first leg wasn't it. It wasn't that. So I'm a bit positive in terms of what I expect to play out for the game. In terms of how the game will go. Morning, Robert. Big up. That is Guna C. Hi, Guna. How is your morning? You must be beaming with a certain level of excitement, but also mixed with a bit of nerves. But for majority of the Arsenal fans, the nerves will kick in when the game starts if they do concede fast, because it is going to it's going to be key who scores first, because scoring fast can sort of change the momentum of the game. It can give whoever scores first a lot more confidence and put the other opponent under more pressure or enormous pressure, you know. So the stakes are high, really. I do not know about you, but unfortunately for me, the captain and Havertz are back. Again, I've read that. And for me, I do not want to look at it as a negative. Okay, but I understand where your fears are emanate from. And here's the thing: a lot of Arsenal fans, okay, not a lot, but some, a good number of them think that with the return of Martin Odegaard and Kai Havertz, Mikel Arteta could use that as pretext to drop Gyökeres maybe to the bench and Eze maybe to the bench to start with Martin Odegaard, or for Martin Odegaard to start in the Eze position and then Eze starts to the left. Again, I say this with a reservation. Even as much as I criticize Mikel Arteta, I know for a fact that he spends the most time with those players. He knows them better than we can make a case for ourselves in terms of knowing them, in terms of understanding those players. So I trust that even when it doesn't not work out, he makes his decision with good um, with good intentions. However, sometimes you have the feeling that maybe he's ignored some little bit of evidence here and there. There's a way Martin Odegaard either struggles, deliberately doesn't, or there's an issue that we do not know about, but he literally never passes to Victor Gyökeres. So Arsenal fans would be thinking to themselves, oh, hold on a minute. If Martin Odegaard plays, what are the chances that we end up in the same way we've always ended up? But he's Arsenal's best ball carrier and the guy that holds onto the ball. My frustration with him is he spends a lot of time in positions that he shouldn't be in for him not to affect the game in areas where he should. Go back to that first leg. I mean, how many moments do you find Martin Odegaard occupying the space between the two centre backs? How many times do you find him in proximity to the centre backs trying to come and pick up the ball? Ordinarily, when you play as a 10, that's a role for the number 6 and number 8. They are the ones to carry the ball from that sort of position forward. Stay in the zone where you can affect the game. I remember throughout the entire game, he attempted one key pass or through ball. He attempted to find Gabriel Martinelli, and that ball was intercepted by Marcos Llorente. So I understand where the fears of the Arsenal fans come from. And like I said, with the performance that Victor Gyökeres gave Arsenal over the weekend, it will be very unfortunate if he were to start Kai Havertz. Not because Kai Havertz is not good enough, but based on the evidence you have, Victor Gyökeres is better. You know? Okay. Hello, bro. It's Kato here in Mutungo. Mutungo Bina, you're so lost, bro. Thanks for the broadcast. That is Ian Kama. Kato. Oh, Kato. Is that the Kato of the twin brother to Waswa? One a Man United fan and another an Arsenal fan. They're twin brothers with whom I used to watch games with at a place called Arena in Mutungo. For those of you that are familiar with the proximities of Mutungo. Sorry, Arsenal did play in the UEFA Champions League 2006. So this could be the second time. Exactly. So Arteta is looking to write history, and this is an opportunity. The weekend will be the opportunity in its own rights, but this is a great opportunity too. For you to have a chance, you must make it to the final. And we could see a tactical masterclass, both teams defending with their lives, both teams looking to capitalize on mistakes. But I don't know. I just love to watch Arsenal play with a single pivot, to have that bit of fluidity about their game. You know, okay, have to go, always great. to hear your insights. Thank you so much, Cedric, for always choosing to be part of this. See you this evening again. Indeed, we shall be back here for the evening. Unfortunately, I cannot guarantee that we will start the broadcast an hour earlier in terms of doing a watch along, but we'll probably start at our usual time, 11 p.m. for our broadcast. So usually that will mean the second half will have kicked off, and that's at 11 p.m. So unless otherwise. So yes, Ian says, yes, brother, we are the ones. We miss you here in Mutungo Arena. Oh, all right. Thank you so much. I mean, speaking of Mutungo Arena, maybe one of these days I should go watch an Arsenal game from there. But yeah, I remember those days. I remember those days of working 11 p.m. Yeah, by everyone. That's Cedric. Oh, so Kato, much greetings to you. I hope your brother is doing well. I know he must be a happy man, given how Man United have been performing recently. They confirmed their place in the UEFA Champions League next season. But send my sincere regards to him. Then Milton says Arsenal first win if they win 2 more matches. I mean, you're 180 minutes away from being triumphant. It's easier said than done because even today's game could go into extra time. I'm sure none of the two sides would want extra time. No, they want penalties. I hate penalties. That I'll tell you for an absolute fact. Regardless of what team I'm rooting for, I just said the nerves that come with penalties. Anyways, guys, forget not to check out our exclusive video about Manchester United. That one is there on the channel. We did publish it yesterday. So go over to the channel and check it out. For those that have recently joined the community as in the form of new subscribers, thank you so much. It's been what, 1 hour and 6 minutes. Why don't you guys allow me quality wrap and we do this again at night? That is at 11 p.m. So we do this every single day of the week, Monday to Friday. That's at 9 a.m. On Saturdays, we come at about 10:30 a.m. And then every single night, Monday to Sunday at 11 p.m. with the exception of Friday. Friday, we come a bit early at 9 p.m. to do the weekend preview. So just turn your notifications on and you'll get the notification every time we put out a video, every time we go live, and all that. Otherwise, allow me call it a wrap. I anticipate I think there should be a video coming out today speaking about Arsenal in exclusivity with respect to the Premier League title and what more is in store for Arsenal and their title rivals in Manchester City. That's the hope. Okay. 2 more Champions League matches, semi-final. Yeah, 2 more games. Of course, the one for tomorrow between PSG and Bayern Munich, we'll have a crack at it tomorrow. I do not want us to get so ahead of ourselves when we have time on our sides. But it does promise to be a blockbuster because both sides rested players. I think PSG rested about 9 players. Bayern rested about 7 players in the weekend. Both sides drew their games. PSG against Laurier, while Bayern, it was against Heidenheim. Heidenheim, surprisingly, a bottom team on the German Bundesliga. But nonetheless, Bayern Munich already German Bundesliga champions, so there's no pressure in there for them to try and get things done. Otherwise, a blessed, wonderful rest of the day. Go anticipate, go pray in your respective tongues for those of you that are Arsenal fans, and hope for the best. But it's in Arsenal's destiny to determine whether they walk away with both the Champions League and the Premier League, or with nothing, or with just one of them. So yeah, thank you, Robert. That is Milton. It's been a pleasure, guys. Much appreciated for your time and effort. For those of you that continuously support this channel, I do appreciate you a great deal. Every little action that you take to support this channel is much appreciated. Bye-bye for now, guys. Stay blessed.